Good morning. Well, just morning. That was very interesting, and I was really pleased to hear. I've been working with infertility for more than 30 years, and third-party reproduction, and surrogacy for more than 20 years. And one of the things I've learned is exactly what both the lawyers were saying. It's really important. I know it's really hard for everybody, and it can feel like overwhelming. There's so much required, and it's also very expensive. It's very important that you do the steps properly beforehand. And it makes it all work so much better if you just take it one step at a time. Don't get too overwhelmed by it, but realise that these steps are there for very good reason. So history has taught that we need stuff to make things run smoothly. And I'm sorry, people can sort of think, no, it's all fine, we're fine. So we've all talked, we know what we're doing. The counselling is not an impediment, even though often the counsellor, particularly the first one, and even with the parentage order after, has to give an opinion and assessment. Counselling is there to help you along the way. And generally that's what it's about. It's to help and to anticipate and discuss. We want to help you get to this spot. So these people were where you were at one stage, and then they've gone along, and they're at the stage. I love this thing. It's the fellows are sitting there fishing. A lot of people like to document their journey, and this is not that they're going to be uninvolved in the parenting. Okay, where am I pointing? No? Down the back. Oh, God, okay. I'm going to whiz through this quickly, and you can ask questions at the end because we want to make sure there's a lot of time. So Katrina's going to talk about relationships, and I'll whiz through the sort of structure. And there are differences in different states, and if you want to ask me specifically, you can ask me after. So there's the pre-surrogacy counselling, and that is required in most states. And it requires all people to be seen by the counsellor, so the intended parents and the surrogate and her partner, and there's very often assessment required. Now, it may or may not be done within the clinic. Some of the counselling is done in the IVF clinic. Some of them require an independent person to see you. Then during the pregnancy, there's no formal requirement for counselling, but a lot of the clinics will provide support. Post-birth relinquishment counselling. This, in New South Wales in 2010, up till that point, all that was really required, it was not legal and not illegal surrogacy, the short version. There was the pre-surrogacy counselling was the routine protocol, and an independent person saw people. And I did a lot of that before 2010. And when the Act came in and the relinquishment counselling was in the Act, I thought, oh, these poor people, they've been through a lot, they know what they're doing. And I had to be persuaded of, really, they know what they're doing, we're okay. I now really believe that post-birth relinquishment counselling is hugely important. It's the only bit that is absolutely about the surrogate, and she needs it. It's a debrief. How did it all go, and how's your family, etc. Now, the parentage order counselling is required in quite a few states. That's for the change of the parentage order, the change of birth certificate and everything. Look, the court looks at all of these bits. People get little packages of stuff, then they send them off to the court. Okay. The issues that are considered in the pre-surrogacy counselling are psychological well-being. How is everybody? How have they handled the fertility problems? For gay guys, what do the family know about what you're doing? Relationships, how do the people know each other? What are the plans for after? What have they talked about beforehand? The gametes, embryos, which ones are you using, and who knows what about what you're using? Surrogacy treatment. Who's going to be in charge of making decisions? What about prenatal testing? You talk about what does everybody think? So it's sort of a spot in time. Okay, what are you all thinking about if this scenario happens? What are you thinking at this stage if something happens? And the legal processes. What do you know about what's happening? And where's everybody up to? And then there's a comprehensive report written that everybody gets to see. And for me, that's a very important part of the counselling process. It's part of the informed consent. Now, in New South Wales and some of the other states, there's a requirement for an assessment of suitability, and people can feel a bit freaked about it. Please, don't worry about it. It's if it's about making sure that everybody's on the same page and know what they're doing. I've done a study, and out of the whole study, only 2% of the 200 or so cases I've done, I said, this is not suitable, you can't go ahead. And they knew exactly why. Some of them I said, look, really it's okay, but you need to do this and this and this to make sure everything runs smoothly. And some of them decided not to go ahead because they themselves found problems. So it's the suitability thing, don't fuss about it, everybody. You know it's there to help you. Well, I'm not very good at this, am I? Lucky I'm not a technical person. Okay, what the counsellor's looking for. There's been permission, time and space for issues to be thoroughly considered. Everybody has the capacity for understanding the implications and possible outcomes. So everybody's okay, they know what they're doing. All exhibit empathy and understanding for all involved, including current offspring and future offspring. So what about the children involved here? One of the saddest things I ever heard was here at a conference, not this conference, at a Surrogacy Australia conference, or Families Through Surrogacy, where the surrogate was talking about her whole experience of it. And she said her children never got to see and meet the baby that grew in mummy's tummy. Now for me, that's not a good outcome. That's the children, they're part of the whole story too. They had a falling out in the relationship. The whole point of doing this is to try and stop problems happening. Respectful relationships between all involved, evidence of an understanding of the legal implications and the best interests of the children, they're paramount. Now, potential red flags, things that could be a worry, a lack of respect, a lack of consideration. It's all about, people should be treated the way I would like to be treated myself. So if you sit in a situation, okay, how would I like to be treated? If everybody's on board doing that, it's smooth. Significant mental health problems, significant relationship problems, any major power control differences, any implicit coercion, or, if people feel like they have to do it, it's really hard. If someone's in a family, say for example, and they have to help, the implicit thing is you've got to help, you're okay, help, that's a hard one. If there's explicit money being paid, one of the big things is about the sovereignty of the surrogate over issues related to her body. So if the intended parents are not okay about her making final decisions, most often the surrogates in the pre-surrogacy counselling say they will make a decision based on what the intended parents say. Sometimes, however, when it comes down to it, it might be just too hard for them to do. So it's about what everybody is. So if a problem were to come up in a pregnancy, and say a problem with a baby, for example, then the first thing you do is you pull out the report and say, okay, what did we all say? How do we feel now? You call in a counsellor. Let's sit down. You've got time. You don't have to decide right there and then. You have to decide quite quickly, but not right there and then. How do we feel now? Where are we up to? Okay, what are we going to do? Most often, I don't think I've ever had a surrogate say, I'm not prepared. No, I have. I had one who said they need to understand I can't terminate. They went ahead, baby was fine, but that was the deal that she made it quite clear. If the surrogates, if there's non-acceptance, a criminal conviction, particularly child-related, obviously. Post-birth relinquishment counselling. I'm going to get water, sorry everyone. What happens is I talk too fast, get nervous, as I do, and then my voice goes and I can't talk. So the relinquishment counselling is how was it compared to expectations? How did everybody go? How was the birth? Who was present? How does she feel now? Now, I like this one to be at about 6 weeks, when the body's settled. I have not met a surrogate who wanted to keep the baby, her head. But her body, by very definition, her body needs to be absolutely connected to the baby. You cannot carry a baby and deliver a baby and whatever if your body isn't connected. So her head is not wanting the baby, but her body can feel quite different. They can feel a sense of huge physiological loss. So it's how is it now? How is it feeling? This is a debrief session and it's really important. It's like, okay, that's fine. When I do the pre-surrogacy, I say to people about maybe the surrogate might need to have what I call a hug attack after. So if she feels really weird, if she says to the intended parents, I feel weird, they can go, oh my God, she wants the baby back. She doesn't want the baby back. She feels weird. People can feel funny. They go home, where's the baby? What's happening? I've had one person who had postnatal psychosis. This is the body and its reaction. So I say to people, you just ring up and say, I need a hug attack. She goes around at a time, or they bring the baby to her. I had one lovely fellow who drove from one side of Sydney to the other when the surrogate went back to work and had a bit of a moment. Hold the baby, the body goes, oh, baby's fine, it's okay, it's fine. And it settles. So it's about the body and everything settling. So this is about how does the surrogate feel? It's not about she's going to change her mind. I haven't met anyone who wanted to. Here we go again, Miranda. Okay, parentage order is, by the way, the relinquishment counselling is in the legislation in New South Wales. It's written in the legislation in South Australia. And some of the other states do recommend it, but it's not required. I still think it's a great one, by the way. The parentage order one, a lot of the states have a requirement of different sorts of this. These are the issues in the New South Wales one. What's everybody? And it runs very straightforward because the other bits have been done well. So the pre-surrogacy has been done well, the post-birth done well, everybody's fine. I like this one at about 3 months. I understand about the birth certificate. That's a bit of a different issue because you need it for things like, if you can, for Medicare and stuff. But in terms of just taking time, there's no panic. It's no panic. It's okay, it's going to be fine. Take your time. Parents, go home with the bub. Settle down. Then you have to all go and see somebody who cannot be the first counsellor. Okay. Katrina's going to talk about relationships now. And then at the end, any questions? We want to leave you time for questions.
Thanks, Miranda. Hi, everyone. My name's Katrina Hale, and I'm going to open my water in anticipation. So you probably heard multiple times throughout the weekend, people talking about altruistic surrogacy in Australia, where they talk about how it's a relationship. So now let's see. First game. So relationships between intended parents and the surrogate and her partner are a key to success. Surrogacy relationships, they're real relationships. There's so much talk about screening and matching, but has anyone like me got the guilty secret of enjoying reality TV and things like Married at First Sight? Just nod your head if you do. Yeah. So as you can learn from that, matches on paper, matches made by experts, they play out very, very differently in real life. So there is no quick fix, there is no quick way, there is no guaranteed result of doing things like screening and matching. They're real relationships, and real relationships take time and effort. So how do these relationships form? Miranda, with a few others, did a study over 15 years looking at, well, what's the foundation of these relationships? And if you look, you can see that most of them are actually family relationships. So the origins of altruistic surrogacy in Australia was the expectation that it would take place within a family member. So it would be a family coming together to bring another family member into the world. So therefore there was going to be an ongoing relationship between the child and the woman who gave birth to them and the parents, and it was just going to sort of take place, just going to be there. So therefore the ideal type of relationship for altruistic surrogacy is a family-like relationship. What we've got is a group of people coming together to bring a child into the world. It's not so much a transactional, compartmentalised, one person is having a baby for another. There's no sense of sort of ownership of, this is my child, my baby. It's like, the baby is a person, you just look after them, as they take their passage through the world. So, again, a close family-like, extended family-like relationship, that sort of intimacy in relationship is very important. So how do you create these relationships? So establishing a strong foundation over a substantial period of time. So it's very easy to mistake the busyness of the surrogacy project management, all the appointments, fertility clinics, counsellors, lawyers, all those reasons to meet, those reasons to talk. It's very, very easy to mistake those for a relationship because you're very busy, you've got a lot to talk about, you've got a lot to do. But what about if we take all that away? What's left? Do you have anything in common? Do you like each other? So you need to spend time together in person. So, online's great. Chatting online's great, we're all busy, but you actually need to spend substantial time seeing people without coffee, So seeing people at their worst as well as their best, seeing people with their visitor face mask off. So apparently it takes about 100 hours of being in person with someone to actually get to know them. So you need to invest about 100 hours, and sleeping in the same room, sleeping in the same building doesn't count. Okay, you've got to be awake for that 100 hours. So, but even with a family relationship, I've seen family relationships go through surrogacy journeys. I've seen best friends for 20 years go through surrogacy journeys, and it puts those relationships to the test. Surrogacy is bizarre. Okay, taking a surrogacy journey together, it's a very, very unusual thing to do. It's very, very demanding. It's very unique. It's very complex. How do you have a baby between 3, 4, 5 or 6 people? You know, if we're talking surrogate's partner, egg donor's partner. That's a lot of people coming together in a team to bring a baby into the world. It's a very complex relationship. The more people you get, the more relationship, communication and interpersonal issues that you get. So what about the other people on the journey? Your family, your kids, the people around you. So they're a really important part of the team, of the journey. But let me tell you, it's going to be harder than you think. Okay, can I repeat that? Because this is what everybody who's done surrogacy has told me. It was so much harder than we thought. We thought we were prepared, but it was so much harder than we thought. There's no roadmap. It's a very unusual thing to do. So bring your family members into it. Okay? Having family support, having your confidants, having people who know you, people on your team, people you can debrief to and vent to is a really good idea. And when do you tell people? Unfortunately, surrogacy is a very intrusive process. So there's no having sex behind closed doors to have a baby. Sorry, that's gone. So a lot of the romance, a lot of the intimacy, a lot of that privacy, it's gone. There's like counsellors and lawyers and doctors in white coats standing there watching, you know. It's pretty intrusive. So therefore, you know, sometimes people sort of go, well, we don't want to, you know, we want to sort of let people know, hey, we're pregnant, you know, we're going to have a baby. But then waiting, you know, like you might normally do to sort of announce a pregnancy and then also sort of go, oh, and by the way, we're doing it via surrogacy. Your family members, they have to get their head around the whole surrogacy thing while simultaneously getting their head around the fact, oh, we're going to have a baby, you know, there's going to be a baby born. So sometimes that anticipation of the joy and excitement that's going to come with that announcement can fall flat. Because think about it, you've had years, you've been thinking about surrogacy for years, probably asking questions, finding out all those questions. So the last thing you want is to sort of go, well, hey, we're pregnant, we're going to have a baby. And a family member to go, is that legal? Or if you're a surrogate announcing it, you know, it's like going, how much are you getting paid? How are you going to give away, how are you going to give away your baby? That type of thing. It's like going, but I'm really excited. I've got news to tell you. So you know, bring your family members into it. Okay, give them time to ask all those stupid questions. Okay, that you've had years to ask, so that then, if there is a pregnancy, then they can share that joy and excitement with you. So you can tell them, hey, this is what we're doing, and then go, but we're not going to tell you until we're pregnant, like a normal pregnancy. Just give them time to sort of adjust. So the other thing to be aware of is, you know, the good old, you know, our relationships in crisis, our marriage is in crisis, so we thought we'd have a baby to fix it. Okay, same with surrogacy. Okay, if your relationship with your partner has got problems, or if your family, your relationship with your family has conflicts or issues, or stuff which has been there for years and decades, dynamics in that family, surrogacy is going to make it worse. Okay, surrogacy is going to put pressure on those relationship systems. It's going to enhance and aggravate all those conflicts. Okay. The middle of a surrogacy journey, the middle of a surrogacy pregnancy is not a time to be looking to do that family therapy or that relationship therapy, okay? The number of people I have coming to me wanting me to fix decades-old family issues in the middle of a surrogacy pregnancy, it's not the time to do it. The surrogacy pregnancy is about carrying that baby, carrying your surrogate, okay? Carrying that pregnancy through to birth, which is a big load to do. So the other thing is, think about children, say surrogates' children. They are very much part of the equation. So they have to contribute, they have to sacrifice, they have to be invested in it. So, it's very important to sort of help them in their understanding of what's going to happen. What are we doing this for as a family? What's the bigger picture here? So, there's a lot of people come along on a surrogacy journey. So, it's relationships. Stuff happens, okay? Like any relationship, a friendship, a marriage, a work relationship, there's interpersonal issues, there's communication issues, there's communication breakdowns. People are people. People have got personalities. This is how it happens. So it's normal, okay, in relationships for people to have misunderstandings. Communication's pretty fallible. So, breakdowns can occur. So it's important to be realistic, okay, to not have unrealistic or expectations of perfection. So have some confidence, reflect, sleep on it before taking action. So it's sensible, it's wise, to access counselling, okay? Often there's that stigma about counselling. You only see a counsellor if there's something wrong or you've got problems or you're not coping. There is no roadmap for surrogacy. It's a very unusual journey to take. So seeking someone who can help guide you on their way to sort of go, this is why you're feeling this way, this is why this has affected you, this is why this has triggered you, this is normal, okay? Here's how to tweak it to get it back on track. It's sensible. It's a sensible and wise thing to do. So the other thing is not to mistake. The surrogacy forums are fantastic. Cannot praise them enough. Where else do you find all the other people in Australia who are doing surrogacy? But they are not a confidential counselling session. They're not legal advice, okay? They're a community of support. So just be mindful of oversharing. You might share something about your surrogate or your intended parent. Someone takes a screenshot. It gets shared around. It can cause catastrophe. So be mindful of where that information goes and who's it shared with. The other thing is about legal advice. Often when people get to a point of dispute or a problem in their surrogacy relationship, they think, if I go and seek legal advice, that's about starting a fight. It's a bit like if I'm in a marriage and I go and seek legal advice, that's because I'm wanting to have a divorce, start a fight, create a separation. Whereas in surrogacy, again, it's like going, hey, here's someone who's got the legal roadmap. This is my first time doing this. I can't ask my neighbour about how they did it. There's not a lot of people who have done this before who've had this exact same situation that I've had. So seeking legal advice, it's not about starting a fight, it's about ending a fight, okay? It's about getting someone to help guide you. All the professionals that you encounter on your journey, their aim is to have a happy ending, okay? Their aim is happy families. Their aim is unity, not division, okay? So that's what's going to be their motivation if you seek their help, to help you come together, not come further apart. So there we go. There's a happy family at the end of it. So any questions for Miranda or myself, or throw it to both of us?
If anyone has a particular question about it, this is why I'm sitting here with my iPad open, about if a different state or different jurisdiction, I can answer it. I've got the information here. No questions. Golly, that's why I raced, to leave you time. I think the thing is that I think people who've been through it, they can know that it's been valuable. I think beforehand people can see it as a hurdle. Okay, we've got to do this. Oh no, we've got to do that. Oh no, they want us to do this. Oh no, it is from experience, it really is the way that we do it. We don't do it to be difficult. We don't do it to rip people off. We do it to help people on the journey. Okay, so I don't need my iPad. Oh, yes.
Do you know how different the process is, let's say in the States in comparison to Australia?
Sorry, I can't hear.
Do you know how different the process of counselling is in the States as opposed to Australia?
In the States?
Yeah, US.
Oh, in the US.
Sorry.
So in the US, well, I think that there has been people speaking about it. My understanding is that they have agencies that help, and they do help all the people. They don't have the same formal process of group counselling like we do here. Is this what you're asking? They will, the surrogate is screened, but her partner, as I understand it, is not in the same way of doing it. Whereas here, everybody, it's because it is based on relationships. I think in other countries, yes, it's important. If you do it in other countries, I think it's important that there's respect. If you're, as intended parents, you're trusting this woman with your most precious human being. Yeah, so it's important that there is respect, but people don't have to develop the same sort of relationships as they do here.
I think in the US it's more depends on, agency by agency, as opposed to in Australia where it's sort of mandated under legislation. So it depends on sort of how you do it in the US to some extent.
Katrina, can I just add something to that? The agency that we worked with is renowned for their counselling and their support. They have a service provider that's very well established, and their surrogacy counselling process is for life, and they do have group surrogate meetings. We did pre-counselling, we did it throughout our journey, also afterwards. Even though it's 20 years now, if our surrogate mother wanted to tap into that counselling, that's still at no charge. So it is very individualised on the agency that you are using.
Absolutely. And I think that's another thing to sort of recognise, like in Australia there's mandatory counselling at the beginning and at the end, and no mandatory counselling at any other time. So whereas it's a very unusual thing you're doing, like I said. So even though it's not mandatory, it's a really good idea to actually just touch base, check in with a counsellor. Anna said, it's like, even if you think you don't need it, touch base with counselling just to sort of check that you confirm, that you are in the right place and you are heading in the right direction, just for that ongoing support. And it's like an insurance policy, okay? It's an investment in things not going off track. And the same thing, like, if you're accessing overseas surrogacy, where it's not an agency where they've got a comprehensive longitudinal counselling program, if you feel it is a bit lightweight on counselling, where you're going, there's nothing to stop you coming and seeing a counsellor in Australia at any time, in your surrogacy journey. Just because it's not mandatory under legislation, you can still have counselling while you are undertaking an overseas surrogacy journey, because it's still, it's probably even more stressful because of the logistics and the distance and the separation and the lack of support that's involved.
I'll come to you. Sorry, can I just add to that? Quite commonly, I will suggest, if I do the pre-surrogacy counselling, I'll suggest to the intended mother that she has her own separate counselling with somebody, because it's by its very definition, she's had to go through lots of things. She's either been born without a uterus, she's had something major that her uterus has been removed, or she has a major health concern. So when she's going through surrogacy, it can be really, really challenging. She wants to be part of it all, but it also can touch all of that deep hurt inside her that she hasn't been able to do it herself. So I will often suggest that it's not written down, it's not mandatory, there's no reports, that she go and see somebody and talk about how it is, so that she then doesn't, psychologists talk about things like how emotions get transferred around families and stuff like that, particularly family therapists. So an upset, I'm sure you all know, an upset can happen in one spot in a family and then all of a sudden it's gone around and it's sitting somewhere else. So it's actually a really good idea for an intended mum particularly, less so for the gay guys because they don't have this particular hurt inside them. a really good idea to go and see someone and just talk about how you're feeling. So then when you go for the ultrasound, see the baby, there's none of that feeling. You can have joy with it. You can be thrilled. And if the surrogate can then tell you how they're feeling without you feeling deep inside yourself, I really wish it was me. Sorry.
You mentioned the references to the legislation. What are the legislation called?
What, in New South Wales?
Oh, well, all different ones. Is it the...
If you just look up like New South Wales surrogacy legislation or
It's the Surrogacy Act.
Queensland, yeah.
Oh, which is it, New South Wales?
No, it's Queensland, but
Queensland?
same
Yeah,
sort
if you
of
just Google
question.
Queensland surrogacy legislation or Queensland Surrogacy Act, it'll come up. So,
Sure.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Queensland is fairly similar to New South Wales. They have the same requirement for pre-surrogacy counselling and the same for the parentage order. They don't have the requirement for the post-birth counselling, but it is recommended, and often clinics will see people and support people during it. There is one significant difference with Queensland and New South Wales. In New South Wales, if there's a person is under the age of 25, the person doing the pre-surrogacy has to assess their emotional maturity, but they can do it. If it's in Queensland, they can't do it if they're under 25.
Some of the logistics of counselling in regards to cross borders. So if you've got one party in Queensland, another party in another state, and another party in another state, where do you conduct the counselling for each of the parties?
when you say conduct, do you mean like the physical location of the counselling, or...?
Well, you know how legislation says if you're going to get a parentage order, you have to be a resident of that state.
Yeah.
Let's say, okay, my surrogate may be in another state. Does she do that in her particular state, or does she do it under my state of
Yeah.
where I live, or where's that get conducted?
Yeah, so Miranda and I would both conduct counselling for sort of any state in Australia.
okay.
But what it comes down to is like you need to follow the counselling requirements for the legislation of the state where the intended parents are located and where they're going to apply for the parentage order from. But then if, say, you're doing the IVF procedure in a clinic in a particular state, then you also have to sort of follow the process and counselling requirements of the IVF clinic. So it's you get used to it. We're used to it, aren't we, Miranda?
Yeah, and it is difficult when you have, but it's not uncommon people have one person in one state and another. I do suggest that to make it easy, you make it easy for the surrogate, you know. And so I suggest the intended parents fly to the where the surrogate is for the counselling, particularly the beforehand. The counsellor has to see people face to face and in the parentage order, but say the post-birth relinquishment, I will regularly do it via Skype. So you make it, people will work with you as much as possible, and it's quite common that there's different people in different states.
All right. Look, that's great. We've run out of time, but thank you so much for all that. Terrific, guys. Really good.